Welcome back to another explainer. Today, we're diving headfirst into a truly fascinating piece of philosophical source material. It's a text from October 2023 by the author Zhu Feng, titled Analysis of the Three Treasures of Life. So, if you're ready for a highly structured, kind of mind-bending look at a very unique metaphysical framework, well, you're definitely in the right place. We're going to unpack exactly what this author believes sits at the very foundation of all existence. And honestly, it might just challenge everything you know about what it means to be truly alive. Okay, let's dive right into this. The source poses a fundamental question right out of the gate. What actually separates a living being from a literal stone? Well, according to the text, without three specific vital elements, any entity, yes, even a human being, is reduced to what the author vividly describes as a mummy or a walking corpse. No way around it. Without these elements, a being is completely devoid of true life. So you might be wondering, what exactly are those three essential elements? The text defines them as the three treasures of life, and they are affection, love, and sex. Now, the author posits that these aren't just psychological concepts reserved for us humans. Nope. Instead, they are the absolute baseline elements present in all living beings. We're talking everything from the smallest insects and simple plants, all the way up the chain to humans. Here's our roadmap for this explainer. First, we'll look at the core of all life. Then we'll explore affection as nature's emotional bond, followed by love as a non-material architecture. After that, we'll get into sex as life's energetic exchange, and finally, we'll wrap up with expanding domains for ultimate freedom. All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, the core of all life, beyond the physical. The absolutely crucial premise to grasp here is that these three treasures, they are considered non-negotiable laws of existence across all of nature. A life that possesses affection, love, and sex is described as full of vitality, thriving, and just totally vibrant. But what about a life without these three treasures? Well, the author firmly argues that losing these elements reduces any entity to a mere physical automaton. And that's regardless of how physically intact or biologically functional it might seem on the outside. In this framework, without the three treasures, a life form becomes, literally, indistinguishable from a lifeless stone. Moving right along to Section 2, affection, nature's emotional bond. And this brilliantly illustrates how the text applies the concept of affection far, far beyond your typical human relationships. It extends it deep into the botanical and natural world. The source gives a really specific example here. It claims that plants nurtured with affection and love will inherently thrive, producing vibrant flowers and large, sweet fruits. Conversely, a plant nurtured by someone harboring hate, the text says it's going to wither, weaken, and die, even if all its basic physical needs are totally met. The text actually goes so far as to assert that plants can experience genuine fear and anxiety based entirely on the emotional affection they receive. Wild, right? This brings us to a core philosophical principle in the source material. It states, the connotation of affection determines the level of a life. The narrower the emotional domain, the lower the level. So this introduces this really fascinating hierarchy of life narrative. Basically, the source measures a being's spiritual evolution by the sheer breadth and width of their emotional domain. Take a second and think about your own emotional domain. How wide does it currently stretch? Let's walk through this ascension together, step by step. Step 1 is having affection for only a few people. The text categorizes this as a low level, basically that of an ordinary mortal, comparing it to a kind of animalistic, narrow emotional domain. Then, Step 2 expands this to having affection for all people. This vast domain represents a much higher level of life. But Step 3 is where the framework completely peaks. This is having affection not just for people, but for all beings, mountains, rivers, the sun, the moon, and the stars. The author states that reaching this universal, expansive domain actually elevates a being to the level of gods, meaning they now belong to the realm of heaven. Okay, let's shift gears to Section 3, love, the non-material architecture. Now, the text defines this second treasure in a pretty unique way. It argues that love isn't fundamentally an action or just spoken words, but rather an unwavering structural component of life itself. Take what we might call false love that's merely spoken, or transactional love driven by self-interest, wealth, or power. The text explicitly states that love born from those earthly desires is not true love at all. True love, conversely, is described as an unchanging, manifested state. The source claims that achieving a non-material structure that unconditionally loves all sentient beings is what elevates a person to the spiritual level of angels and bodhisattvas. To really drive this point home, the text incorporates a beautiful proverb. The orchid grows in a secluded valley, not needing people to appreciate its beauty. It's so poetic, right? The key takeaway here is that true love, in this specific framework, is an entirely self-sustaining state of being. It just is. It remains completely unaffected by the surrounding environment, or whether anyone is actually standing there to watch, appreciate, or reciprocate it. Which brings us to Section 4, Sex, Life's Energetic Exchange. This is the third and final isolated pillar of the author's framework. And fair warning, the text takes a highly biological, yet deeply energetic and universal view here. It defines sexuality as an exchange of elements and energy with the opposite sex. Furthermore, it argues this energetic exchange is absolutely essential for any life form to manifest its perfect intended characteristics. I mean, this framework is so broad that the author points out even non-flowering plants, grasses, and trees, like poplars and willows, have male and female distinctions. They naturally engage in this necessary energetic exchange of elements through pollination, and the text firmly categorizes that as their form of sexuality. Now, because this energy exchange is viewed as biologically and spiritually essential, lacking it is treated as highly dangerous. The author claims that if these desires remain unfulfilled, it triggers a rapid, cascading pathological state. We're talking anxiety, restlessness, irritability, violence, anger, jealousy, resentment, severe internal conflicts, and ultimately, a catastrophic decline in the very capacity for love, which leads the life form to quickly drift downward toward the lower realms of existence. All right, let's tie it all together in Section 5, Expanding Domains for Ultimate Freedom. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how the author synthesizes these three pillars into a deeply provocative thesis, using a very well-known historical quote to back it up. The text cites Jesus Christ saying, "In heaven there is neither marrying nor giving in marriage." But the author offers a highly unconventional interpretation of this. The text argues that this is because marriage dangerously narrows one's emotional and sexual domains down to just one person, which directly contradicts that universal expansion required for a higher level of life. Let's connect the dots on how the source logically views this. The text insists that narrow domains, which, again, it explicitly links to human institutions like marriage, are simply unsuitable for existence in heaven. According to this framework, to exist in higher heavenly realms, an entity's domains of affection, love, and sex cannot be exclusive or restricted in any way whatsoever. They have to expand infinitely, moving away from the narrow and individualistic to the totally broad and universal. To bring this all home, the author provides a literal roadmap for evolving from an ordinary mortal into what the text calls an advanced life form. Step 1, fill your heart with love for the entire universe. The mountains, the rivers, all of it. Step 2, consistently express that love and beauty, totally regardless of your environment or circumstances. And step 3, aligning with those earlier warnings about pathological suppression, is to fully satisfy your sexual needs. Which brings us to the author's final, incredibly bold assertion. Sexual freedom is the ultimate freedom of life. So what does this all mean? Well, I'm going to leave you with that provocative question as a thought experiment. It is, without a doubt, an unconventional metaphysical framework blending deep emotional universalism with unrestricted biological exchange. We hope this breakdown of the three treasures gave you a clear, structured look into this fascinating source material. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I will see you in the next explainer.